Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Clarke, the Rothman Family Curator here at the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's program in conjunction with the exhibition Paula Modersohn-Becker, I Am Me, currently on view in the Modern Wing through January 12th. Support for this program tonight was generously provided by the Allan McNabb Endowment Fund. As we begin, a brief reminder to silence your cell phones. I left mine in my office just in case. And now it is my pleasure to introduce artist Renee Cox. Renee Cox is a Jamaican-American artist, photographer, and activist whose work focuses on representations of Black women. Among the best known of her powerful works are Queen Nanny of the Maroons, Rajay, and Yo Mama's Last Supper. As a specialist in film and digital portraiture, Cox uses light, form, digital technology, and her own signature style to capture the identities and beauty within her subjects and herself. She has received awards from organizations including the Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation, the National Gallery of Jamaica, and Creative Time. Cox's work is held in the collections of the Brooklyn Museum, the Mildred Lane Kemper Art Museum, and the Studio Museum in Harlem, among many others. Although I knew her work from reproduction, I first saw Renee's photographs in person last year at the Brooklyn Museum, and I was completely floored by the connections I was making in my mind with Paula Modersohn-Becker's paintings. One of the reasons I feel drawn to Modersohn-Becker's work 120 years after it was made is how much she speaks to our current moment. Who am I? Where's my career going? When should I become a mother or not become a mother? Where's my life going? What kind of sitters do I want to have in my portraits? And although she's been long famous in Germany, Modersohn-Becker came to the attention of Americans in the early 1980s through feminist art historians. These individuals celebrated Modersohn-Becker's nude mothers and children and her nude self-portraits, calling into question their meaning around 1900 when they were made and their subversive potential both then and now. When I saw the power and monumentality of Renee's work last year, I thought a conversation might be in order. So without further delay, please join me in welcoming Renee Cox to the stage. Hello, everybody. So Renee and I just walked through the Modersohn-Becker exhibition for, a good half hour, 45 minutes. And I just wanted to kick this off by seeing what your reactions were to the art in terms of your own production.
It was really interesting. I mean, like her work, if you go see the show, I mean, her work starts out, it's very, very dark. She's working with charcoal and whatnot. And there's a lot of nudes in it. And the connection of, motherhood and whatnot, I felt a kinship there, if you want. And just the way that she represented herself, I would say. I mean, obviously, I guess for her at that time, she was pretty fearless to do what she was doing. Although I don't think there should be really any fear involved in doing that, but I just feel like seeing it like that, it was like, oh, okay. So in the the end of the 18th century, she put this work out there, so.
I agree. She was definitely fearless to create this kind of work. But she didn't have the fearlessness that you had in the sense that she never showed this work. It remained in her studio. She sold one work of art her entire career.
Oh God, poor thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's a horrible fate, no.
Yes. But it just kind of brings to mind the first time you made the decision to photograph your own body and show it publicly, was that a terrifying prospect or a free?
No, not at all. It was very easy. It was very easy. I mean, my professors in grad school, what I'm about to say, my professors, you can't say it like that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, come up with something else. But the truth is look, I like myself, and I'm really easy to work with, and I'm always available to myself to work whenever I want, you know? So self-portraiture just seemed like the absolute right thing to do. You know, I don't have to set up any appointments with anybody. I don't have to deal with anybody's nagging or, kvetching or, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's easy.
And the price is right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not cheap, but don't get it twisted. But the thing is, it's like, I just thought it was the best way and the most authentic way for me to, bring up this subject matter. It started, I would say to you, when I was at the Whitney program back in, 92, And I was like the first woman to ever be pregnant in, at that time, their 25-year existence. And I had just come out of the fashion industry where I was fashion photographer for 10 years. And there, it was like, people were like, okay, just don't have the baby on our shoot, don't break your water, this kind of thing. And even after I had my first kid, I would have like my nanny bring my kid to the studio where I was shooting, and I would go off into another room, breastfeed, and go back to the shoot. And that was with fashion people, right? Sometimes fashion people get a bad rap, they're not like perhaps, say, as astute as other people. However, I got into the art world where people were supposed to be far more, intellectually sophisticated. And when I said to them at the Whitney program, back in, I think it starts in September, and in October I said to them, oh, I'm pregnant, just like that, with my second child. And people were like, what? Are you kidding? Are you sure? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna get rid, it was just like, whoa, this is like Planned Parenthood. Not Planned Parenthood like that woman, Margaret Sanger, because that was much more sinister, but just Planned Parenthood in the sense of like a couple says, okay, we're gonna have a second kid. And it was like I was stunned. I didn't know what these people, like their reaction was. And simultaneously, as life would have it, it was a very synchronistic moment, there was a magazine that was done by this woman named Mila Shore. And it was called Meanings. And in that magazine, she had this article like Motherhood, apple pie, and like being an artist, something like that. And she had like little essays from about 9 or 10 female artists working at that time. And most of their comments or how they saw things was like, oh yeah, when the curator comes to our house, we gotta hide the baby, we gotta hide the toys, we gotta just act like we have no life whatsoever, and we're just focused on our work. That's all we do 24/7. And I was like, what the hell? It's like, that's not me, that's not what I'm about. So in that moment, it was a pivotal moment for me because I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna give them pregnancy. You're not gonna kick me to the curb because I'm pregnant. I mean, I am the giver of life, so I'm gonna let people know about it, and I'm gonna photograph myself, and that was the beginning of the rebellion to the way people think about women when they're pregnant, that, we should be hiding somewhere or whatever it is, so.
I have definitely been told at certain points in my career, you really shouldn't talk about your children because it's just really unprofessional. It's like, oh, okay, they're a really big part of my life.
Exactly.
So I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
But.
And then the male counterpart, when he gets married and has the family, it's okay. Like his prices could go up because now he's not running around town chasing tail, right? Like he's supposed to be grounded at this point, you know what I'm saying? So now he can dedicate himself fully to his practice. But, such a double standard. And I was just like, no, I'm not having it. So here it is. I mean, I even had people, like, I'd go out to a gallery opening, and this one female artist, she shall remain nameless, says to me, back in my day, we would, like, cover that up or whatever. Like, I don't know, wear some schmatza, you know what I'm saying? Some bag over yourself. And I was like, girl, I said, look, if it was summertime, I would be like freaking wearing a bikini. I'm gonna let it all hang out. I want you to all see this. And the thing that you realize is that people that never see pregnant women. And they never see pregnant women nude. And then, Annie Leibovitz and Demi Moore, they like ripped me off, but, whatever. Yeah. Putting on the cover of Vanity Fair. I'm like, wow, that looks really familiar, Interesting concept, but whatever.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So this is dated 1993. So this was taken right at the moment you were talking about when you were in the Whitney program, correct? Or just after?
It's like a little bit before, because that's my first child, who's
Okay.
now 35 years old. So that's the first one. And this came to light because I was at the Whitney program, and the late Marcia Tucker, who was the head of the New Museum at the time, came through, and she saw the 4x5 Polaroid that I had in my little teeny studio. And when she saw it, she stopped dead in her tracks, and she's like, what's this? And I was like, it's this photograph that I did of my son and myself, And she's like, okay, no, I want that for the Bad Girl show, and blow it up to 7 feet. I was like, oh, shit, okay. I was like, okay, we can do that. And that's how it got into the Bad Girl show. And that was the one time in my life where Roberta Smith wrote lovely words about me and my work. She basically said it was best in show.
Yes.
And my phone was ringing off the hook. People wanted to buy it and stuff, like on the phone, sight unseen. That was the only time that happened.
So I'm very curious to hear more about the Bad Girls show. So it was precipitated by the curator, Marcia Tucker, coming into your studio. And then how did the sort of ambiance of the rest of the exhibition take shape? Just in the same way?
I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
We never had that discussion. It was just like, okay, put it in. It went in, and it got a lot of attention.
That's really exciting.
Right? Because the thing for me, it was like, the message is very simple. It's like, okay, women, girls, whatever, have your kid. And the way that I'm holding my son there is, if you're a parent, that's the easiest and quickest way to pick up your child and move from point A to point B, right? It's not like, no, you don't do that, okay? You pick that kid up and you go from here to there. And that's what that was about. And it was like, and of course, yes, I'm a girl that's interested in a good shoe. I come out of fashion. So I've had people say, but you're wearing heels. I'm wearing heels right now, too, so get over it. It just gives the body a better line. I don't care. That's what it is, and that's how I roll, basically.
And at what point did the sort of male David, how is this connected? How are
Well,
these
no,
two images
originally it
connected?
was a diptych.
It was, oh, okay.
Originally, from day one, it was a diptych. But when Marcia saw it, she didn't want him. It didn't fit the bill, right? So they were separated for like decades, actually. It wasn't until I did a show, oh God, what's the name of that place, out in Brooklyn, like about 2-3 years ago, that I finally brought them back together. Now, so. And he's holding a book by Chet Diop called The African Origin of Civilization, in case you were wondering.
Absolutely.
I just thought I'd point that out.
Just makes me think of that crazy controversy a year or two ago where, people talked about covering up David or some bizarre, crazy, it's like, that's David. I mean, that's what he's supposed to do.
I mean, men have dicks, so like,
Exactly.
what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying?
I love this one of your two sons, which I feel like is reproduced less than the one.
Yeah, it doesn't get a lot of play, one, for whatever reason. But I love, like, my son, the older one on the bottom there, because it almost has this very sort of Renaissance-y kind of vibe to it, almost angelic or something
Yes.
like that, you know.
The younger one's looking a little rambunctious.
Yeah, and still is.
It still is.
At 31.
Yes.
They're old. They're like not even kids. As people say, you're kids. I'm like, I don't have kids. I have men. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're grown.
So this is, kind of a interesting
Right.
comparison. We were
This
just
is also from a diptych called "Your Mama Goes to the Hamptons." Okay. Yes, people, that is the Hamptons. Yes. Okay. Because I was interested in, the ethnographical photographs that were created by white folks, when they invaded basically the African continent and, stole all the artifacts and everything else. And the stereotypical photographs that they would send back to Europe would be, usually sort of demeaning and whatnot. And my whole practice has been about revisionism, I guess you could say, of histories that were people's histories, black people's histories that have been removed or whitewashed or whatever you want to call it, and to bring back that truth to it and the authenticity of it. So I like to play with people's nerves a bit. So when they see this, they go, oh, wow, that's great, this little African there breastfeeding her child. Oh, he does look a little light. Maybe she was raped by the master, whatever. But yeah, I'm married to a white guy, so that's just what it is. So, and suckling on the breast. And they're having that kind of fantasy. And then you see the title, it's like, Your Mama Goes to the Hamptons. You're like, say what? And I'm like, well, look at the manicured lawn and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not in the bush somewhere. I'm sitting on a teak chair, so.
And this one also.
Right, Your Mama at Home.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. There's a pregnant belly is a very beautiful thing, but you're right, it's not something. But before Demi Moore, and I remember Natasha Kinski too. Was she before Demi Moore or after?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
It was somewhere in there, but Natasha also had that python there.
Yeah, she had the python, which added a whole new.
Yeah, it's like that was like extra.
That was definitely extra.
I mean, I know there's probably some Adam and Eve kind of maybe reference there, but I don't think that snake in the Bible was a python that was like 9 feet long. You know what I'm saying? It's very strange. No, the whole thing for me was like once I was pregnant, another thing is like you take advantage of it. You do the thing that's closest to you, the thing that you have access to. You know what I'm saying? People ask me that a lot, and I go like, no, look at your world and then take from there. I'm talking about other artists and stuff. They ask me that. Instead of like, I don't know, having the idea 10 years later and now you've got to go find a pregnant woman or this, that, or the next thing. I like to be more in the moment. And if there's a certain thing going on in my life, I am going to try to take advantage of that at that time. So, and then also just the fact that there was no space for pregnant women. Like you didn't see any representations of them. So I was basically like, okay, I'm going to give you that. And I'm not going to hold back. I'll do as many images as I want of myself pregnant. And then you can't say I'm objectifying anybody because it's me. So that's the other thing.
And how were they received when they were first shown?
They were received well. People like responded to it well. Like I said, it's this like secret. So, they're like very curious. It's like, oh my God, okay, that's what it looks like. Because you don't have access to pregnant women. So.
Remember the first time I breastfed, my father was just standing in front of me staring, and I was like, oh, this is really awkward.
Yeah.
He had never seen it before.
Really?
Because my mother didn't.
Right, yeah, that was the formula time.
Yeah, he was just like, this is totally fascinating. I was like, can you please step back?
Right. Yeah, it's like kind of creepy.
Yes.
Because, when you have a baby, like your tits come alive, okay? You might have thought they were just decorative. But when you have that baby, they have intelligence. It knows when it starts to shoot out. It shoots out from 8 different places on your areola. Every 4 hours, full,
just does
But
its
it's the
thing.
best thing for your kid. My kids
It
were
is
never
so
sick.
healthy.
No.
So it's the best. So is this in the
is
Hamptons?
beached. No, that's in Jamaica. That's in
okay.
Negril.
Okay.
And that's just called beached. There's not like a whole lot of verbiage about
But it's
it.
much more
Serene.
it's serene, but there's also a different technique to it. It's not this sort of
It's more like a
chic black-
tintype.
Tintype, exactly.
So,
And you can see the the sort of streaks
Right.
of the photographic medium and the process and
right.
its
Because
creation.
there I was shooting also too with my all-time favorite film, which was Polaroid 665, 669, I think it was 665 or 669. Anyway, it was a positive, negative Polaroid film. So like this, if I was shooting, like for my Queen Nanny series, I could give the actual Polaroid to the subject, but then I have the neg, which is what counts, and, to reproduce from there. And also with that film, the blacks are so rich. I was so upset when I stopped making that film. Yeah, it was nuts. It was like really, and it was like a size of almost, like 4 by 5 inches. So it was big. And anyway, that's just a little technical thing for y'all. That's not very interesting.
Oh,
but
it is though. I love the technical
yeah.
stuff.
That's also 665. So that same film.
Oh, this one is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this one feels so much more sepia toned.
Well, no, because it's like I did like a little tin type thing on it,
Okay,
afterwards.
okay.
That one is like the real, the thing without any manipulation.
Now, we were talking before about Paul Gauguin.
Mm-hmm.
This has a sort of, does this have a Gauguin reference? Because it certainly,
No,
Or is it not-
really.
not in-
Not really. I wasn't thinking about Paul Gauguin when I did that. No.
because Modersohn-Becker,
Yeah.
some of the work, she was very,
Right,
was
but she said
fascinated
she
by
was
Gauguin.
into them.
Yeah, she was really
Yeah.
interested.
No,
Yeah.
I've never mentioned Gauguin associated with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
No, understandably,
yeah.
for good reason.
Yeah.
There's a critic in the Reader who reviewed the Paula Modersohn-Becker exhibition, and she said, what did she say? She takes the ick out of Paul Gauguin. Oh no, I take that back. She's Paul Gauguin without the ick. That's what she said.
Okay. All right.
In any case, I wanted to ask. We're going to quickly go past these, but I wanted to ask about this amazing work in relation to the controversy it raised at the time.
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was like the most amount of attention I ever got in my entire life. I loved it. I'm not gonna lie. But no, it was so crazy because it's like, really? Over a photograph? Because I'm nude there? I mean, for me to be nude in that moment was the purest thing I could do. And especially, as I mentioned before, coming out of fashion, I didn't want to have any, because I'm wearing some sort of clothing or accoutrement where you can begin to categorize or put in a certain class or any of that stuff. I wanted it to be pure. What's the purest thing I can do? Is to be nude. And, they acted like, I don't know, like it was, something out of Hustler magazine or something like that. Or Maplethorpe, where I have like a bullwhip coming out of my asshole. It's like, it's just, I'm nude, that's it. I'm just presenting myself as pure as I can be. But there's a lot of crap that goes around with that, because I can tell you, the guy who was the head of the Catholic League at the time, Egan, I mean, we did a few things like on air, where they're like, oh my God, it's like, but you're nude and this, that, and the next thing. And then I say to him, I go, well, are you afraid that because I'm a black woman and I chose to put myself at the center of that table, is that what bothers you? Nobody could answer that question. They didn't want to go there, because it was sort of like, well, so.
And did Rudolph Giuliani get things stirred up the most, or was it the Catholic Church that was more against it?
No. Giuliani starts it off. He starts it off because, what did he say? the day before the show opens, the Daily News calls me, and I was just like, this is like weird. I don't even remember exactly what they called me about. But the day that I went to see the work was the press day. And I was teaching at NYU, and this show was called Committed to the Image, and it had 95 black photographers in it. And my class was all these little white kids. So I was like, okay, I have a moral responsibility to take them to the Brooklyn Museum to see this show on the press day, where it's not crowded and everything like that. So I'm happy to report that we made it through about 75% of the show, if not 80, until we got to my room, okay? And it had like velvet ropes, blocking the entrance and stuff like that. And me, I can be a little childish, so when I have works in museums or something like that, I will go up and touch it, right? Or do whatever I want to do with it, and then, oh my God, you can't touch it, and I'm like, no, I can, it's mine, okay? This damn museum did not buy this piece. It's basically on loan from me, courtesy of the artist, and I'll do whatever I want. So when I did that day, and I had my students there with me, setting a good example for them, but anyway, it became like a Fellini movie. Now, if you don't know who Fellini is, please Google him, because you're really missing out. Because I've done talks lately, and people, who's Fellini? I'm like, oh my God, you don't know who Fellini is? Okay, anyway, it was like a Fellini movie because all of a sudden, all these journalists or tabloidist people came popping out, literally what felt like out of the woodwork. And then I had mics in my face, and they're going, Mayor Giuliani says that you're anti-Catholic. Mayor Giuliani said this and that. And I was sort of like stunned. I was like, what the hell? But I already gave you a little bit of a hint of how I reacted to it. I kind of turned my back to them for 10 seconds. And I was like, oh my God, Renee, because at that time, I will say to you, I was in my egoic mind, right? So I was like, oh my God, this is great, And then I turned back around, and I'm like, what do you say about me? I'm anti-Catholic. And then I said, well, what about commandment number 7? Okay, that commandment that says, thou shalt not commit adultery, okay? And then I followed it up with, and having my wife, Donna Hanover, crying all over Fox 5 when this was going on. So the next morning on the Daily News, I have friends calling me and going, my God, what did you say? You're on the front cover of the Daily News and the Post and the second page in the Times. And I was like, oh shit, okay, game on, let's play. And it was this back and forth thing of he would say this and then I would say that. And then you had the television stations that were at the museum the following day, and then had the nerve to think that I was going to be standing outside of the Brooklyn Museum at 6 o'clock in the morning to talk to them about this, and I'm on the phone. I'm not doing it, you figure it out, that kind of thing. And it went on basically until September 11th. That's how long it went on, because it happened in 2001.
All over this particular image.
Yeah.
Was the concern about you or the individuals around you at the Last Supper?
Oh, no, they didn't even mention the individuals. It was all about the thing of, like I said earlier, it's I really feel it was about the fact that you had a black woman that said, hey, I can be part of this. I can, run this thing, right? I went to Catholic school for 4 years. And in Catholic school, they said that we were all created in the likeness of God. So I was always trying to figure out, well, how is that possible? Why does this man have blue eyes and blonde hair when he lives in the Middle East? And I didn't think people were traveling, to the extent that they are now, that, you would have this kind of mix-up, right? So I was like, okay, I'm doing it. I'll do it, And I mean, as a, former Catholic, I had there was a lot of discrepancies. Because, at 4th grade, they forced me to do Holy Communion, right? And then you're eating these, no, you can't eat it, right? It's these wafers, which I found out they make in Secaucus, New Jersey, all right? And then they're telling me, this is the body of Christ. And then I must put it on my tongue, and I cannot chew it. So, and this crap just gets stuck to the roof of your mouth. And then they came with the wine, which was nasty. It was worse than Manischewitz, you know what I'm saying? I'm married to a Frenchman, so like I know my wine, right? Anyway, so the thing is, it was like syrupy, and then we're supposed to drink this, like this is the blood. So I'm like, as a kid, I would say to them, I said, but wait, isn't this like, you talk about the pagans, but isn't this like cannibalism? Like, what are we doing here? So then they sent in a Jesuit priest to talk to me. Because, you know, the Jesuits are the higher sort of intellectually, branch of the church. And then the Jesuit, he was actually cool because he said to me, you know what? Your church is within you. And I didn't understand fully the meaning of that until many decades later. But when he said it to me then, I like ran home. I told my mother we didn't have to go to church no more because our church was here, you know, and enough with all these hymns and get up, kneel down, get up, kneel down. Then people begging for money with baskets and whatnot. I was just like, no, I'm sorry. So Catholics, you know, and their whole story, you know, it's like, oh, they're the only religion that has imagery. Nobody else has imagery. You know, Jewish people don't have imagery. Islam doesn't have imagery of like a Christ or whatever. You know, they orchestrate. It's like propaganda. It's like a campaign, basically.
So speaking of Catholicism, how did this particular work go over? Because it was shown at the Venice Biennale, right?
Oh, yeah, no, that was the kicker, because at the Venice Biennale, everybody's like, oh, wow, it's like beautiful. And there I'm like a stone's throw away from the Vatican. It's only when it came to New York that it got crazy, you know. So it's just like, wow, this is nuts, you know. Kind of falls in with my opinion sometimes of certain Americans, you know, that they were peasants. They weren't sophisticated. They were shipped over here. They were kicked out of Europe. You know, the elite didn't have to leave. They had potatoes to eat. You know what I'm saying? So.
So speaking of religious imagery, this I find to be such a stunning image. And I wanted to ask a bit about your choice of model. I mean, obviously Michelangelo's Pietà.
Well, it's me.
Yes.
And it's this, at the time, I can't even tell you the guy's name at this point. I forgot, you know, because it was like a one-shot deal. You know, he was a friend of a friend. He came through. I was shooting it, and that was that. And again, it went back into the whole notion of this revisionist look at art history, because I studied in Florence when I was at university at Syracuse. So I had all this stuff pushed down my throat. This is high art. This is great art. Da-da-da-da-da. And then the only time I see any kind of representation of somebody that looks like me, they're like, what do you call them? Like not the jockeys, but, you know, the little Moor thing or whatever, which is a whole other conversation onto itself, because the Moors were actually West African sailors who went up to the Iberian Peninsula and brought the Visigoths and all those people up there, knives, forks, toilets, and the whole bit, because they were civilized. The people in Europe were not civilized, okay? And then if you want reference, then go look at Braveheart. All they did was fight and kill each other in the mud and stuff. It was disgusting. Anyway, so when it came time to do Pietà, I mean, I just did it because also 30 years ago, the same thing was happening that's happening today. Every week, we hear about some young black man that's been shot by the police, or this one or that one, or some crazy person someplace else. And that was the impetus behind that at that moment, was to reference that. And actually, you're seeing it like super big. The size that you're probably seeing now is, I think I reprinted it and it's now bigger. It's like 40 by 40 inches. But the original one was only 4 inches by 4 inches. And the reason for that was simply because I wanted to force you to have to go close and look at this thing, like one by one. And I'm big on scale, don't get me wrong. I love scale. I love the bigger, the better, because I'm of the conviction if it falls off the wall, it could kill you, whatever. That I'm gonna make you look at it. You're not gonna like just walk by, oh, that's nice. You know, like as if you were going through, I don't know, some Tinder thing nowadays, you know. Swipe left, right, whatever, you know. So I use scale a lot in my work. And for me to do something 4 inches by 4 inches, I mean, it's pretty intense. And nothing has changed. That's the worst part about it. It's still happening. So.
When you were mentioning studying art history, and this certainly makes me think of Manet.
Oh, it is Manet.
Yeah.
That's totally Manet. But it's not Manet, because you know where Manet stole that from? There was a Roman sarcophagus that had a scene on it called the River Gods, which is the exact same composition as this. And then he went and did his Déjeuner sur l'herbe, right, in Paris, and that little Ile or whatever it is. And, and then I said to myself, okay, great. I'm going to go back to the original source of what you took and do this River Gods thing. And that's shot out in the Hamptons, in the Springs, and you can Google this on Google Maps. It's called Pussy's Pond. I did not name it. People, I've been accused of having named it and, you know, just to be provocative, but I did not. It's called Pussy's Pond. And this piece, just to give you an idea, this piece is probably about 12 feet. It's on like 3 panels, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's huge. So.
And these are this is the sort of ore source for Manet's Déjeuner, the source.
Original one
the original
that
source.
he took.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the guy's, you know, friend, and one of them was my trainer. Yeah. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So just, I wanted to just quickly go back to this.
Young Yo Mama.
What?
Young Yo Mama.
Young Yo Mama, exactly. So you created this before you were in graduate school.
Oh yeah, this is undergrad.
Oh, this is undergrad.
Syracuse at Newhouse. Yeah. So.
And did you consider yourself an artist then, or you were just experimenting?
No, I mean at that point in time, I wanted to be a fashion photographer. I wanted to be Avedon. You know. I mean, I still love his work. Rest in peace, dude. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what my aspiration was at that point. But this is the first time that I begin to get naked in front of the camera. And this is also a time, there's no digital or anything like that. So this is like literally self-timer, run back and forth every like 15 seconds, get into position, do your thing, and you know, repeat for 36 frames. So that kind of came out of that. And then it kind of took on its own little life, even at Syracuse, because there was some art, but I wouldn't say heavy-duty art, like publications that we had at school, and you know, it was on the cover of a couple of them, so it ended up in a lot of guys' dorm rooms and stuff on the wall and whatnot, you know, so it was like, okay, cool, whatever, yeah.
And so after Syracuse, then you went into fashion photography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I graduated from Syracuse, and then from there came into the city. Like my first real job was at Glamour magazine as an assistant fashion editor. So I did that for a year and a half. But I was always testing. I was always shooting models and whatnot, you know, for their portfolios, for my portfolio as well. Then I got married to the Frenchman. Then I moved to France because you had to do military service, mandatory. So then we lived in France for about, you know, 2.5 years, and then we came back to the States. And in short form, you know, that's the story, and we're still here, so.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That really is.
And
It's
I'm still
interesting.
working, too, because I think after I did Your Mama's Last Supper, people thought, like, you know, okay, we got rid of her. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to hear from her again. Because they were like, you know, they try to make the artist to be like, you know, this crazy, like, sort of insecure kind of person, like you're going to ball up into a little ball and, you know, you're going to be like, oh, my God, I can't go out anymore. Everybody hates me. But for me, it was totally the opposite reaction. I was like, no. You know, and the best thing about that whole thing, I'll tell you, is like, one, I learned how to say my name. By that, I mean, I can go anywhere. If there's a line of people there waiting, I just go, hi, I'm Renee Cox. And they're like, they don't see it on the list because it's not on the list. But then they're like, oh, no, come in. Yeah. And for reservations in restaurants as well.
I should have used your name when I made our dinner reservation tonight, clearly.
Yeah.
But there does seem to be, there's a connection between the fashion photography, that world that you lived in, and the art photography. There's obviously a connection. You can see a separation, but, you know, they inform one another.
It's because I am skilled. Because I know how, I'm serious, I know how to take a picture. I know how to light a photograph. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately nowadays, and it's no fault of the kids coming up now, that for some earthly reason, they don't want to teach them lighting.
You should have seen me trying to take her picture in the galleries today. She's like, wait, the light. And I'm like, what light?
That light. So it's like they do them a great disservice. Although I will say it's been very good for some of my former assistants, because now they can charge $2,000-$3,000 a day to them because they don't know what they're doing. So it's really kind of wild. And even in grad school, I mean, people tried to give me flack. What I'm saying, like, oh, but it's so perfect to photograph. And I'm like, so what? That's how I like it. And theoretically, that's how it should be. So it's like, for you to make it artsy is what? For me to like rip it, stomp up and down on it, urinate on it, and then, oh my God, that's so incredible. Oh, you so this, whatever. And I'm like, no, it's fucking garbage. What are you talking about?
It's really interesting to think that people are saying, oh, it's too...
Oh, yeah, no,
it's too pristine.
It's
interesting.
too clean.
Yeah.
Oh, this or that. And I was like, get over it. You're saying that because, one, you couldn't light your way out of a paper bag. So...
There you go.
Yeah.
So before we move on to Q&A, and I want to leave plenty of time for audience questions, I think it would be wonderful. I'd love to hear more. I'm sure the audience would love to hear more about the project that you are now dreaming up.
The project, well, there's two things. One is my project called Soul Culture, where I'm dealing with fractals and sacred geometry, and I'm using bodies to create a whole human being, if you want. If you go to Renee Cox Studio on Instagram, there's some of that stuff there. And then simultaneously, and then also there's these statues that I've done that I am diligently working on getting them produced to about 7 or 8 feet at least. And then what you're referencing, what I just told you about, is the fact that I'm going to go down to Mexico, to Oaxaca, and I'm going to be doing portraits of Black Mexicans because, they've been sort of kicked under the rug. And if you know anything about Mexico, you might have seen the Olmec statues. So there's this whole thing of like, oh, well, there were no Black people there. Black people only came over to the Americas as slaves. And this is not true, okay? Because in West Africa, you have a current in the Atlantic Ocean that goes around down, to the bottom of Africa and then comes up on the other side, like on, Brazil and whatnot. And I've now found documentation and stuff that it would only take them 5 to 6 days to get to a Brazil or Mexico or some other place in Central America. That's why you have pyramids over there. It wasn't the Incas that had the initial idea of that. This is people coming from Africa who brought that information with them, And so it is my responsibility to make sure you all know that and respect that, you know what I'm saying? Because Black folks have been treated like second-class citizens in this country, and I'm personally not having it. So.
That sounds like the perfect way to end. Thank you so much.
Can I do mic drop? I want to drop my mic.
Boom.
But I don't want to break your stuff. And I want my whole check.
Exactly. We'll deduct that. So as I said, I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So we have someone walking around. One of my colleagues is going to be walking around with a microphone. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and someone will come to you with a mic so everyone can hear you. Don't be shy.
Jay and Renee, we have a question right here. Here. Hi. Okay. First of all, thank you. It was really so amazing and interesting to listen to you talk. And what I've been wondering is that, and what I've been struggling with my own practice as an art student, the use of female nudity, but in a way for me to use it in my own female gaze. And I would love to hear your thoughts about it and how we as women artists now use it in a more powerful and controlling way, and like how you use it in your own practice, I guess.
think you have to use it as you see fit, right? And know that it is a very powerful tool as well. One of the things I didn't talk about in part of my trajectory, when I was in grad school, I did another diptych called, what was it in the South? Oh, something in the South Bronx, and then Do or Die. Oh, breaking the chains of whatever, slavery. So I'm standing on a mound in the South Bronx in this really grungy place. And there were firemen there actually putting out little fires because the homeless people that sort of lived there would take the copper wire and take the plastic off in order to get to the copper so they could sell it and stuff. So there were all these little micro fires happening there. And I remember the sun was going down. So I was like, wait a minute, I need the sun. And there were firemen there. And then so I said to the firemen, I'm like, look, I just want to warn you, I'm going to be nude, and I don't want you to arrest me. And they're like, we don't arrest people. And anyway, we'd love to take a photograph with you in the nude. And so we did. And it was very like Statue of Liberty, like I'm there like this with my fist up like that. And I have these three firemen at varying heights around me, and then one staring directly at my pussy. I mean just like this. And I was like, okay, whatever. But that was part one. Now, part two of the story is that I had about maybe 50 people, I guess from the neighborhood or whatever, watching me do this. And I had my colleagues from grad school, 6 of them came with me up there to do it. So I was like, okay, I'm doing the shoot and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, here comes the Jeep with the beats, boom, boom, boom. And they see me, it's I don't know, 6 guys, whatever. And they see me standing naked in this field on this mound of trash. So they backed that Jeep up at 60 miles an hour. I'm like, holy shit, what's gonna happen now? And I had on sneakers, I had on Converses, so I could run if I had to. But when they got to the crowd and they found out what I was doing and why I was doing it, those guys that some of you white women might get in an elevator with, and you're like, oh my God, I'm clutching my pearls, I feel so threatened, whatever, when you're not. But anyway, they came to me afterwards, and they were so respectful and said to me, go ahead, sis, you're doing the right thing, you're strong, you're courageous, all that stuff. And those were the same guys that, you might see in the videos or, now thanks to Diddy, whatever, exploiting women, and having them in this really hoary kind of light. And I said from then, you're better off being totally nude than to be running around with a G-string and some little top. Then you might get raped. But when you're nude, they got to respect you, you know what I'm saying? Or they're scared of you or whatever. I don't know what it is. They're like, this one's real crazy, leave her alone. We're not inviting her to no back bedroom, you know what I'm saying? Don't put that in her drink.
You just you own the gaze.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it's about, owning the gaze. So if you have reason, getting back to your question, if you have reason to do it, then do it. What's stopping you? Who's stopping you? Why are you second-guessing yourself? That would be my question to you. Don't do it. You won't be happy when you get older if you second-guess yourself now. So free yourself. Any other questions? Ooh, you're so quiet out here. It's Chicago.
We have one right here in the middle of the auditorium. Hi, I was just wondering why you decided to go from fashion photography to art.
Why?
Yeah, what kind of inspired you to do that?
28 days. And that's not 28 days for my period. That's 28 days, the lifespan, when you're shooting for editorial for a magazine, that's the lifespan of your work in that magazine. And as I'm shooting it, I have my art director or my editors literally over my shoulder telling me about the next shoot that we're doing. And it didn't allow me to be present, I mean, I always did what I wanted to do with the photograph, but I put a lot of energy into the photograph. So I was like, wait a minute, like, I had my first kid at that point, and I was like, what's my legacy? What am I going to show my kid? And actually, it turned out like exactly how I thought it would be. Like, I'd be saying to my kid, see, look at this. Look, I shot Iman and Joan Severance and all these supermodels back in the day. And then my kid would look at it and go, that's nice, but they're all old now, so who cares? And I wanted my photographs to have a lifespan, a legacy. I wanted them to live on beyond me and to conjure up those discourses that could perhaps young women, whatever artists coming up nowadays, something that they could, use as a reference or something like that. That I didn't just want it to stop after 28 days of like, it becomes like garbage, when you're shooting for a magazine. I wanted my pictures to live on beyond me. And I don't know. And I'm glad I thought of it, because normally when you're like in your early 30s, you're not thinking about that. But I really felt something like that, for my kids to have something to, look at. And then hopefully for their kids, the grandchildren that I don't have, and I'm saying that out to the universe, because
No pressure.
like, they need to get fucking busy with this. And not be telling me about freezing some eggs. And I'm like saying, no, you don't freeze the egg, you better freeze the embryo. And anyway, you might as well just have the damn kid, because you're like waiting for me to get like old and decrepit, and I'm not gonna be able to enjoy my grandchildren.
This will be videotaped and you give it to your sons for Christmas.
I am. No, he knows. I like read them all the time on that. They're fucking for nothing. So.
Maybe not absolutely nothing. Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for...
me dogs. I'm a grand doggy mama. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
This will be our last question up here in the front.
Hi. Thank you for this talk. It was really inspiring. I'm a self-taught photographer, and I sometimes struggle with when I'm doing, and I also work in the same way with myself as the model, and I struggle sometimes with the focus when I'm like...
Tape measurer.
That tape measurer?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and also...
Yeah, it's not like techie. Easy tape measurer, yeah. So measure where your lens is, your camera, I'm assuming it's on a tripod.
Yeah.
So the middle of the tripod, you know what I'm talking about, where the tripod, comes down or whatever, but that's center point, and then to where you are.
Okay.
And then use an f-stop, anywhere from 8 on up, because it's going to be sharp at that point, right? So you don't want to be trying to shoot it at f2.8, right? Where whatever's in the background is going to begin to blur or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sometimes using a mannequin. That's what I've been doing.
Oh, yeah, well, the same thing. The same thing. But, I mean, if you're using a mannequin, I mean, theoretically, you should be able to see that in the lens, right?
Right.
But you should be able to focus.
Yeah,
right?
It works with a mannequin, but sometimes, like, it doesn't. I mean, like, sometimes I'm not using the mannequin because it's not, I don't know, it doesn't always translate.
So are you shooting with a shallow depth of field?
I'm self-taught, so I don't always have I don't know all the, I just do it.
All right, well, that's, yeah, okay, fine.
So I'm not really sure if I could answer that question.
All right, well, you should find out what you're shooting it at, your f-stop. You're using strobes or something, some sort of lighting?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the 60th of a second, right? So just make sure that you're shooting with your lens closed down. You know what I'm saying? Meaning f8, f11, f16, f22.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was so, I tell you what, it was so much easier back then if you deal with it like that. I mean, now it's like, I'm like, yo, there's like too much crap on this camera. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't need all this. I'm like, who decided to put all these buttons to do this and to do that? And I'm like, it's not fun, you know? I mean, although, mind you, I do shoot digitally, but sometimes it's just annoying as hell, you know, trying to figure it out. So.
Well, we're glad you did, and we're glad you still do. So thank you, audience, for coming, and thank you, Renee.